had the cremains. I didn't have this. It was arranged by his wife, of an uncle's cremains who was a pilot during World War II and flew whatever they call P-40s aircraft or something. He and his war buddies all accompanied him on a final flight in their old ancient aircraft, World War II aircraft, out over the Pacific Ocean, and ashes were dumped out the window and flew back. Now, that's our kind of modern day enchantment. Let me show you an example, because this contrasts pretty nicely. And it also shows you some very different ways of thinking about the end of life altogether. These aren't gory, so don't worry about it. Nobody's going to upset. Let me start with this one. I have not been here. But those in Benares, or Varanasi as it's now called, Benares on the Ganges River is sacred. And these terraces you see here with somebody sitting out there, and you see more of them in the back, are called the Ghats, G-H-A-T-S, where bodies of the Hindu faithful are brought to be cremated. The waters of the Ganges are regarded as sacred, so people also do sacred washing in them. And so here you see a couple of women who have washed in the Ganges because it's sacred river, is purifying. And I would suggest that's not too much different than people who go to Lourdes in France to get water from Lourdes sprinkled over themselves or something like that. So they do this sacred wash, and given the modesty rules that exist in South Asia, for men it usually means wearing a kind of cloth covering around your middle that's tied, and you go in the water and you dunk yourself down, throw water on yourself, and you say your prayers. You're doing. For women, they have to go in pretty much dressed as they are, because it's considered inappropriate for women to strip down and show skin at all, really much, in South Asian societies, both Hindu and Muslim. So these women are kind of drying and toweling off after they've done their sacred wash. Now, what exists in India are kind of like B&Bs for the dying. And these are Hindus, not Muslims, that's for sure. Faithful Hindu want to have their ashes scattered in the Ganges because it's a sacred place. And so these B&Bs, basically is what they are all along, and they are the major business of Varanasi. That's the business of that town. And there's ritual specialists there whom you hire, who help you with your body disposal. So what we see here is an older man who's been brought because he's dying, and his son is with him. Now this is interesting. You and I, most of us, are going to die in a hospital. That's standard practice. There's a movement now to die at home, and that's starting to happen among people in this country. But typically Americans die in hospitals. Many die in hospitals alone. Hospitals are very institutional kinds of places. I frankly don't want to die in one, although I've seen plenty of it. That's the work I've done. It's not that you're mistreated, it's just so damn institutional and sterile. It's not a nice place to be. B&Bs, these B&B inns, are thought as places of comfort for the dying to be brought, and they're checked in just like you would check into a B&B when the expectancy is that you only have a few weeks' life left. And you come with your whole family. And in South Asia, your whole family means a whole lot of people. Not just your brother and sister or your spouse and your kids. A whole lot of people. As you can well imagine, that makes the merchants in Varanasi very thankful, because they do well with all the services they provide, the food they sell, the trinkets and souvenirs. You know, it's unbelievable. But here you go, and that means you're going to die in this place, a special place for the dying, which are very well treated, and your loved ones are going to be with you as this process goes on. Now, okay, here's another scene of a man with his father, and one of the services that goes on here is that ritual specialists are constantly in attendance, all the time, 24 hours. Here you see then one of these ritual specialists. He's hired by the family to do this. He works in the inn. He's reading sacred passages from Hindu text for this man. And they'll do it all day and all night if necessary. You pay them for that service. Many Americans who are not inclined to this kind of thing don't get this kind of service. And the only people who do this in hospitals, and then you have to ask for, are the chaplains. And not always a chaplain is called, but sometimes they are. But chaplains in hospitals, I can tell you, I've watched them at work. They come in, they spend some time with the family, and then the pager on the belt goes off, and after an appropriate time, they move on to where they have to go next for another family that has needs. So it isn't quite the one-to-one service you get in India. Now, this one tells a very interesting story. This man looks pretty skeletal. That's the way he's supposed to look. The dying, when they come to these facilities, usually stop eating. They stop taking water. And they do it voluntarily. Because the view in Hindu practice is, if you're carrying a load of fat on your body and food in your stomach, it's just going to make your entry into absorption with the great all, with a capital A, more difficult. Best to show your religious discipline by self-starvation and self-hydration. So that's what this man is doing. Think of the contrast to American practices. Many Americans who die in hospitals will die in an intensive care unit. In an ICU, you are intubated, which is to say you have tubes that go in your nose, maybe in your mouth. You've got medications coming into your arm. And those tubes are providing you with nutrition, liquid nutrition, and water, and even a ventilator, if you're attached to a ventilator, is breathing for you because you can't do it on your own any longer. And so unlike this discipline of self-starvation and self-hydration, instead standard American practice is to treat the body as well as we possibly can by keeping it well hydrated and well fed, if only by fluids. For what purpose, I do not know, frankly. It keeps a body going longer, that if that apparatus was not there, that body wouldn't be going anymore at all. And people in this society sometimes object to having that done to them. They say, no, I just want to die a natural death. I don't want that. But the pressure from doctors, and it's real, is, well, wait a minute. For your grandmother, we can try one more thing. With your grandmother, I think we can make her a little more comfortable with some opiates. Would you like that to help her out? Sure, yeah, we don't want grandma to suffer. The idea here, and this is a very ancient Catholic idea too, is that suffering is good for the soul, because it's going to move the soul longer up that other leg of the trail. Well, what happens here then, when the deceased is finally deceased, here you see the body being wrapped. No fancy caskets here. It's simply wrapped in flax cloth. Now,